what's fun is, you've made a reputation in wrestling for getting things over. You got the NWO over, and it's probably the most long lasting brand or, whatever movement in wrestling that you sort of spearheaded. But May 3rd in Osaka, Japan, New Japan has their Strong Style Evolution show. It draws 53,000 fans, roughly a $4 million house, another 800 grand in merchandise, and 400,000 paid for the television rights. A huge success. Why am I mentioning this? Well, there are WCW performers on the show. nWo Sting, Jeff Farmer, is going to tag with Six, and they pick up a win. We've also got Marcus Alexander Bagwell teaming with Scott Norton to get a win over Lex Luger and the Giant. But what is really interesting is what happens after the show. We'll circle back to that. We haven't talked a lot about Jeff Farmer on the show, and I don't know when we'll bring him up again. But after you guys did the angle at Fall Brawl, the War Games in 1996, where it looks like Sting is siding with the NWO and turning his back on WCW. And of course, during that pay-per-view, it's revealed, nope, it was an imposter. The real Sting is here. And, the Crow Sting would be born as a result of WCW and Ric Flair and Lex Luger and guys like that doubting him. I'm saying all that to say Jeff Farmer hung around for a long time. I don't know when we'll talk about him again. What can you tell us about Jeff Farmer?
Jeff Farmer was, he was an aspiring performer in WCW. I want to be very sensitive. Yeah, sensitive. That's what I want to be. I want to be sensitive. In the way I describe Jeff, because he's a super guy, he was never going to be a major star in WCW, in my opinion, at that time. Not necessarily because of his lack of talent, but because of the overabundance of it that existed at that time. Hard to break through the clutter for him. And the whole, fake Sting, imposter Sting thing was kind of an improvisational idea. Somebody threw it out there, went, oh, this would be kind of cool. This would be a cool little stunt, angle, whatever. And it worked. Jeff did a great job. Physically, he looked very much like Sting, about the same height, same build. Once you gimmicked him all up, put him in his Sting outfit, you would have a hard time differentiating between the two, at least on television. So it worked really well. And we decided to utilize that angle. Actually, the folks over at New Japan decided to utilize that angle over in Japan. And, the motivation was probably pretty obvious. It was a lot cheaper, or it was a lot easier. There wasn't necessarily a financial consideration, but it was a lot easier to get the fake Sting over to Japan on a regular basis than it was the real Sting. And the NWO, as I'm sure we'll talk about when we talk about Hattori and all that, we touched on it before, but NWO merchandise was extremely hot in Japan during this period of time. So Jeff Farmer, who I recently ran into when I was over in Japan last, a couple months ago, is still working in Japan as nWo Sting. He became a huge hit over in Japan. And it's just one of those kind of obscure, unexpected things that you do. It's not like a whole lot of thought went into it. Nobody masterminded it. There wasn't a big debate. We didn't sit around the booking room and, pound, copious amounts of coffee and, try to come up with a way to, create a suitable replacement for Sting over in Japan. It just kind of happened almost as an improvisational kind of thing. But for whatever reason, he got over huge, and he's still working to this day in Japan. He built a 20-year career out of being the imposter Sting. And it was great to see him. I saw Jeff, like I said, when I was over in Japan last a couple of months ago. We sat down and we had, coffee together and had breakfast, and it was great to see him. And the fact that here's a guy who, had it not been for the NWO and the whole imposter Sting character, he might have spent a cup of coffee in the sports entertainment business. And instead, he spent 20 years making a fortune over in Japan. It's great.
I mean, nothing else like that exists in the history of wrestling, right? Well, not that I
Not
know
I'm
of.
aware of. I'm sure there are people out there that can probably, dissect that and argue that. But if there is, I don't know what it is.
It's really amazing. And, I'm glad we got to talk about it here. Well, what I really